In some ways, you'd be totally surprised. When I got the call to go out there, it was Tuesday at about 5 p.m. Eastern, and they said, can you get out here now? And I had to scramble for a flight. I said, look, guys, I can't get there until probably about 11:30 p.m. I rolled up at the Twitter offices, I think at about 12:15 a.m. He's sitting in a conference room, but tons of people are there, and the programmers and the engineers and everything. And he had a very long day. Obviously, he came up to me. We chatted for a few minutes. And then I kid you not, he said to me, look, I know there's a lot going on here. I know there's a lot happening with your account. We want to figure it out. He goes, do you need me tonight? Do you need me to stay tonight? And I thought, how crazy this is. Like, this is literally the world's richest man. The guy's running 17 companies, sending us to Mars. And he's asking me if he's allowed to go home to take a nap. And of course I was like, yeah, you could go. We'll pick this up tomorrow. But that tells you the level of how much he cares about what's going on here.
And I want to add one similar experience to this. When he came into one of our spaces a while ago, I DM'd him like, hey man, do you want to jump in? I think it was the one with Mark Andreessen. I think that was it.
That was the one,
like
yeah.
Mark is in yeah, and then Mark's in the space. You want to jump in? He's like, yeah, I've got 10 minutes. And then he's like, if it's okay. And then later he's like, because I'm a bit busy. I'm like, no shit. And he joins like he's on a plane. He's about to jump into a board meeting at Tesla.
An hour and a half.
I felt. Oh no, it wasn't there was one after Mark Andreessen, not the one he stayed for an hour and a half. The one that he jumped in after like 20, 30 minutes.
Oh yeah.
I didn't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see his message that he only had 10 minutes, and I kind of abused his 10 minutes and became 30 minutes.
I think everyone towards the end of that call was like asking him for stuff, right? It's like, follow me back. What about Tesla? It's just crazy. I felt bad for him.
He's also a CEO that he knows his companies better than any CEO. He knows intricate details of every company better than any CEO you'll ever talk to, especially on a high-tech level. It's crazy what he can do, that guy.
So I do want to just give an overview for the audience and for the panelists. So the first segment of the show will be going through Dave's great thread that went viral and that Elon replied to. I'll pin it above, or actually, let me retweet it on my account, and I'll pin it above. And what we're going to do is we've got questions. What I want to do, Dave, if that's okay with you, is I want to go through it bit by bit, kind of break it down to the audience. I know Elon's busy with a bunch of things with the SEC headaches right now. But if he's got time, I don't know, I'll ping him maybe to jump in. But I want really your take on it, Dave, in this case, and kind of going through bit by bit. And any questions that the panelists have, just put your hand up. Audience members, bottom right corner, you've got that purple circle, and you can ask questions there, and we'll be getting the best questions and asking them to Dave as well as we break through the threads. But Dave, while waiting for the audience to come in and giving them another few minutes, what's been your, what have you experienced after the thread? And I know you posted a YouTube video today that I was watching as well. Would love to know, get a few updates on any developments since, but also your experience in San Francisco. That would be a good warm-up stage before kicking off the thread.
Oh, God.
Sure. So, San Francisco, I mean, my God, it's dystopian right out of, the most twisted sci-fi novel you could possibly imagine. I mean, the level of homelessness there, and it's not just homelessness. I mean, the level of drug use on the streets, and just, it feels genuinely like The Walking Dead. I lived in New York City most of my adult life. I never once ever felt unsafe on a city street. San Francisco is absolutely disgusting. And I think in that thread, I put one of the videos I saw of just, the throngs of homeless people there. That was basically outside of the Twitter offices. So you really got to think about that. You got the world's richest man upstairs trying to fix this gargantuan problem with human communication right now. And quite literally downstairs, you have just abject, it's not poverty, because that's not quite right. Poverty is one thing. You have drug abuse to the highest extent and lawlessness. It really feels like a very, very twisted place, San Francisco right now. That being said, everything that was going on at Twitter, I felt like I was in a movie. I kept thinking, man, this will all make a great movie this one day, because every moment of being there, whether I was with an engineer or a product manager, or even with Elon himself or David Sachs, who was also there, they're discovering. If you ask them one question about, hey, what's going on with my account, or why was I not seeing anybody in my feed, or this or that? They answer one thing, and the second they answer the question, the guys are like, whoa, that uncovered something else. So they're constantly playing this whack-a-mole. And as I said in the thread, he feels like he's building a Jenga tower. And, with Jenga, you pull out one wrong piece, the whole thing falls apart, which is why he said to me, towards the end, he may have to blow up the whole thing and start anew because it's just so deep and the problems are just so complex.
I believe he also called it a
pipes,
flaming dumpster fire, didn't he?
He did call it that.
Yeah, that was towards the end as we were wrapping up. I said to him, I said, Elon, is there anything here that I can repeat back to my audience? Because I said, you've helped me with understand my account and your guys are helping me work through some of this stuff, but I think you need some help on the messaging front, because he is acting as the head product manager and he's acting as the head of PR and the CEO of the company and the COO and the whole thing. And he can do an awful lot more than pretty much all of us, but he can't do everything on his own. So I said, can I send out some kind of Twitter thread about this? And as I said in that first tweet, he said, as long as it's true. And that was pretty amazing because, not only did I have a couple hours with him, but I had hours and hours with all of his guys beforehand. He had no idea what they showed me. It's not like I went into every little problem that I had with him. We were talking about the high level stuff. So for all he knew, they showed me some crazy, crazy secret stuff that he wouldn't have wanted out there. But he said, as long as it's true. And that's what I did. And I thought, and the coolest part about that, by the way, is that he did it. It was clear that he didn't have to think about what he was going to say to me. It was just what came out of his mouth. As long as it's true, you say it. And that's what I tried to do in the thread.
It's just a radical
he called it
transparency that he wants to be part of the fabric of Twitter. Right? This is a complete shift from the way Jack used to run things, which used to be completely opaque in that the left hand had no idea what the right hand was doing. And it seems like in this Twitter, in Elon's Twitter 2.0, there's more transparency going on, and everybody has an idea of what is really happening, right?
Well, he seems to understand what he owns now. Jack, it was very unclear to me, as the CEO, if he had any concept of what Twitter really was or its importance or relevance or anything else. And, I think Jack, I don't think he's like a truly horrible person, but I think he made some massive mistakes that he's going to regret. I mean, all the times, and I think once under oath to Ted Cruz, if I'm not mistaken, he said that they don't shadow ban. He even tweeted it at me once right after one of the hearings that he specifically said no. Now, I get the word shadow ban, the phrase shadow ban. You can probably define it many different ways. And I forget the phrase in the Twitter files that they came up with another phrase for shadow ban. Do any of you guys remember what it was? They didn't actually call it shadow ban. They called it, some other
filtering.
That's what it was. Visibility filtering. So, maybe he's playing some kind of semantic game there. But I can tell you guys, I mean, these engineers, I sat with them, and a bunch of guys, sitting around me looking at all these computers. They had an entire system to shadow ban. Like the idea that there was no shadow banning is insane. And I'm not even saying that you can't have reasons for it. I don't run a company like this where, if let's say a big account got hacked into, let's say Martha Stewart or whoever, Snoop Dogg, somebody got hacked into, and then immediately someone was going to put child porn up. It's like you need some way internally to take some stuff down. I'm not saying that there should be no rules. There have to be rules. But that Jack was so blatantly opaque in his description of what was going on seems very bizarre. And Elon seems to genuinely, well, clearly, look, he bought a failing product, a product that's losing millions and millions of dollars a year, paid a huge premium on it. He didn't do it for charity. He did it because he seems to believe, and I do believe this, that this is the most important tool of communication that we have in our modern times. Yes. And I think he wants to fix that.
So I know Jack Dorsey actually testified to Congress and said, quote, "We do not shadow ban." And that's when they said, as Alex said, that they call it visibility filtering instead. Obviously, he didn't use the visibility filtering term during the congressional hearing because, that'd be pretty damning to them. But in your opinion, based on your conversations with Elon, what do you think he is doing to fix this issue? Because obviously it's pretty complex and he's got to dig through it. But what do you think? Does he feel good about it? What's he planning on doing?
The impression I got is that he wants Twitter to feel like the way we all sort of felt it was, say, 10 years ago, when it was just sort of a clean feed that was chronological and you see who you follow. And then, they have added this For You feed, which I think they're going to change to recommended because the phrase For You is sort of confusing too. But I think he just wants a clean feed and no suppression. And they are going to have some rules that are laid out in the TOS. And by the way, as a guy that started a tech company, I started Locals. We eventually merged with Rumble. You have to have TOS. You have to have some rules. You have to have some regulations. And then you can have internal discussions about how those things are going to play out and how you're going to, how you're going to judge each individual case. But I think he just wants to revert Twitter to that, which is really all that any of us seem to want. If Twitter tomorrow went back to Twitter of 10 years ago, when it was just freaking clean and you saw the people you followed and the numbers sort of made sense, I think we'd all be very happy. I think the problem that he has is that because now he's finding, there's this sort of obvious layer of stuff, which is the labels that they saw that were hitting certain accounts. But then what they discovered for the first time on my account, which now they're seeing on other accounts, there's this sort of hidden stuff within the codes about misinformation and recently suspended and all of this other stuff. So I think he's struggling to figure out how to actually accomplish that reversion, let's say, to 10 years. And again, that might be why he has to rebuild the whole thing.
Do you think that's something he could do? Rebuild the whole thing? I mean, because right now it's like fixing a bunch of leaky pipes and, every time you fix a new one, another one springs up.
Yeah, that's exactly the way he described it. He also, the other phrase that he used, he gave me a couple analogies and metaphors there. He gave me the fractal Rube Goldberg machine. He said the thing about Jenga. The other one, he said it was like a layer cake, basically a tiramisu. And every time you're going into the cake and you're scooping out more, you're just finding more and more stuff that you don't expect. So I can't give you the technical answer to that. Like, can it be done? Is there a way to clone the good parts and the site not go down and all that? I honestly, I don't know the answer to that. My guess is they're probably, it's not like Twitter is all that complex if you went back to the basics of what it was. But I just don't know the answer to that.
I think
it didn't seem to me that they were going to do that tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the issues, and he did touch on this during his conversation with George Hotz, right? During the engineering phone call that was public here, right? A space, where they talked about how the code was essentially a whole bunch of different code bases all put together in a kind of like what I would call a fuck shit stack, right? Where everything's a mess and it's not part of the same code and it just sort of interlaid, right? I think the tiramisu cake is a pretty good example of that, right? That's a good metaphor to describe what Twitter actually is. It's not a single product. It's like 9 products wrapped into one, and they have to untangle each of these products. So like, fixing one part of the code actually messes up like 16 parts of the other code that you can't see.
He mentioned something, and I don't fully quote me on this because I might be getting part of this wrong, but he mentioned something, how they had an issue with Twitter Spaces maybe a week ago, and they tried to tweak something, and then it took the Android app down for a day or something.
Yeah,
so those are the levels. Yeah, so those are the levels of things that he's dealing with there. So he's going to have, I suppose at some point, is just going to have to make a call on this, whether you keep going in and trying to fix this thing as it's syncing or whether you start it anew. That really is a business decision that I'm sure he's not thrilled to have to make.
Well, and what's interesting is when it comes to Twitter Spaces is, it's such a new product that actually Twitter had to respond to what's going on over on Clubhouse. And so there's probably newness there. But the other thing is I'm an intermediate amateur coder, but it kind of seems to me that the other problem that they're having maybe, and I'm curious how he might have discussed this with you, is that you had various levels administratively in Twitter trying to inject various things, whether it was, doing shadow banning stuff or whatever else that really kind of messed up the code. Did he give you any indication of how messed up the management structure was at Twitter prior to that might have attributed to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think he feels that, well, look, first off, there's the easy answer on that, which is that he fired half the company already, right? So they had 7,500 employees. They have about 3,500 now. So if you're going to fire half the company, and remember, everybody said, the whole thing's going to be taken down. It's not going to work. Your exit from Twitter is imminent. He obviously had people on the inside. I don't think he knows whether, and this I can't give you like the cleanest, answer on, but I don't think he knows whether they really got rid of everybody that was doing nefarious stuff. And I think that was what surprised them. I think the reason I got the call on Tuesday to come was because for about 2 weeks I had been working with these engineers looking into my account. And a lot of the things they were finding were kind of, they were things that they sort of knew related to shadow banning. It was only when they went deep into the code did they find these 3 extra things. One was on misinformation. I think one was recently suspended.
Recent abuse strike was the other one.
Recent abuse strike, right. And what they then found on the recent suspension one that they thought was super interesting was one of my suspensions had been from about 6 months ago when all I had done was screenshot that Jordan Peterson had been suspended, and I got suspended for that. But what they realized was when I got unsuspended, because Twitter said it was an error, which only happened after, enough of my friends on Twitter made a big stink about it, that it actually, whatever the functionality of the suspension was within the code, that remained. So that really shocked them. That meaning that if you got hit with something, it's one thing to have repercussions, meaning you're banned or visibility or whatever is diminished, that kind of thing. It's one thing when they can see it. But now when you're being unsuspended for the last 6 months, my account has been hit with some level of censorship. And that's the part that they still don't know. So I think that's what instigated the call, actually, for me to get out there.
It's really interesting.
So Dave,
Elon's gone.
So yeah, Sam. Yeah, before I give you the mic, Sam, so I want Sam and Alex to ask a question. I see all the hands go up. What we're going to do, Dave, is I'll let Sam and Alex just ask a quick question. And then I want to kind of go through a process of your experience from walking into the door and then, your first impression after speaking to the staff, and then your discussion with Elon, and then go through the thread, and then we'll open up the discussion for the panelists to ask questions. But yeah, Sam and Alex, I'll give you 2 final questions before we kick off the story.
Be brief. I mean, I just think it's really interesting because Elon's actually gone through this with both Tesla and SpaceX, that he attempted to kind of reverse engineer, old rocket technologies, the Lotus, etc. And after a year or two, he gave up and started from scratch and created these things from a brand new platform. So it's interesting to hear that. My question, Dave, maybe a bit generic, is did you get any impression of any specific priorities, any kind of number one goals that Elon has for Twitter that he wants to try to fix as soon as possible?
No, not specifically. It was everything. That's why everything that he discussed, it was either the Jenga metaphor or the Rube Goldberg machine or the cake. It was sort of everything. Like he couldn't really, a couple of times he said during the conversation, he's like, my brain's overloading right now. Like it was 1 a.m. and he had been asked 4 jillion questions. And I think, as someone might have referenced earlier, I think he had testified in a lawsuit earlier in the day. The next day was the Tesla quarterly earnings. So the guy was trying to do 4 billion things and then have random people online ask him about shadow banning and trying to fix that. So I didn't get a sense that it was like, oh, there's one thing we got to fix tomorrow. If anything, I think he was looking at it a little bit more like, oh, if we fix one thing tomorrow, we just opened up 10 other problems.
Alex, I'll give you the mic just for a final quick question, and then we'll kick off the discussion. Go ahead, Alex. And Alex, you've got a pretty good story as well that relates to this topic.
Yeah, and then I was going to say, so I actually just shared a tweet up in the Nest, a similar experience to you. So I was one of the accounts that was locked out when I tweeted a image of Zelensky with the Ukrainian flag before Congress, and I was locked out because it was flagged as non-consensual nudity. And then I know, it's hilarious. As you can see, after that day, I experienced what you basically said, the experience of being suspended or visibility filtered or whatever. I was gaining at a minimum 1,000 followers a day to 2,000. And then right after that, I was either losing followers or gaining 10 followers. So I just wanted to comment on that other users have seen that. And I had recently seen that. And then also, did they say they were looking into that, or did they end up getting a conclusion on what those labels actually were?
No, they don't have a conclusion on that yet. They found the labels and it wasn't just my account. Then basically I gave them a list of accounts and I tried to be as fair as I could in terms of political allegiances and all that stuff. And they started finding things all over the place. And then there were bizarre accounts where you certainly would have thought they would have been hit, and it didn't look like they were hit. But as he said, that doesn't mean they're not hit. It just means that they haven't got to that layer of the cake yet. So that I think is kind of where they're at with everything. It's like, man, you open this Pandora's box and you don't know what's going to come out of this.
Thank you, Dave. I think, because I think you fixed my account. So thanks.
Well, I do what I can.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just started unplugging machines over there and it seemed to fix things. So,
it's good stuff.
Dave, I want to go through the experience and we can go through it along with the thread, because the thread is really well written step by step. But I want to get your experience first before digging into Twitter and Elon. The office itself, I think you talked about it in your YouTube video today, how it felt like a deserted office. I'd love to get a better sense of what it feels like inside, along with the sentiment around the employees there, because obviously they've had a bit of a shock this year or end of last year with half of the employees getting sacked.
Sure. I do want to say to you guys, just for brevity's sake, I only have about a half hour because I do have something at about 6. So I'll try to be somewhat brief and get to as much as possible. And I'll try to buy a few extra minutes if possible. The Office was very weird. You see this place that, we've all seen the videos on TikTok and everywhere else of these Facebook employees going into Meta and the Twitter people going in there, and they got their coffee and their wine and their video games and foosball machines. Like, there's all of that stuff, but there's very few people there. Now, granted, I was there, although I was there at some points throughout the workday, I was mostly there with him late night. So you don't expect, thousands of people to be there. But one of his frustrations has been that they went to remote work and basically no one's showing up to work. So where I spent most of my time there's a main conference room upstairs. That seems to be where he hangs out. He's got security and his assistant there. And then there's a whole bunch of engineers that are coming and going. And he's basically, from what I could tell, he was basically just kind of bringing in people one at a time and trying to solve problems. And, so our meetings kept getting delayed throughout the day because obviously everyone goes in there and then it's really wild. I mean, he gives everybody as much time as he possibly can. It was kind of shocking. But the office itself, I used the word dystopian before. You see this freaking massive, this huge, kitchen with that looks like, you'd be feeding as, he was paying a couple $1 million a year to feed these children in essence. And you see just nobody there, and you go downstairs and they've got all these, beer taps and just nobody's there, and things look kind of disorganized. And, they still have some of the woke messaging on the bathrooms about all genders and all that stuff. So there's a lot that needs to be done. That's more of the nitty gritty of how he just needs, I think, somebody to come in and really clean up like the day-to-day stuff. That's sort of separate than all this code stuff.
And how was the sentiment among the employees that you've spoken to?
It was really good, actually, because I guess the people that have stuck around or that he allowed to stay around, and especially ones that were probably there late night, roughly in his circle, like they love what's going on there. So the two guys that I was spending most of my time with, who were pretty high level guys, they were thrilled to be there. They're relatively new to the company, meaning that they were brought in from somewhere else to help him fix it. I don't know if they would want me to share where they came from. But they were there literally to solve problems. And, everyone's kind of walking around with a laptop in hand. And, it's kind of funny when you see these guys because they're all staring at their laptop, wandering around. Nobody's looking up. And, I would say the general sentiment, first off, Elon himself, he's funny as hell. He was sharing memes with us when we sat down in the first meeting. He was sharing some funny video about coding. Like, he's laughing a lot. Like, he really is having fun. Like, he gets the seriousness of it. But that was sort of one of my main takeaways. Like, this isn't just some like pure businessman who comes in just to crack heads and turn this thing turn it around. It was also like he really does seem to be enjoying life. So I think that kind of permeated at least the 100 or 200 people that were pretty much in the area that I was in.
This is in line with Mark Andreessen's chat in which he said, like, the Elon you guys see on Twitter, the Elon you guys see in interviews is the Elon that we see behind the scenes. It's unfiltered. And I got that same sense from your discussion with him, Dave.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he was funny. Like, he kept joking about things. And, I kept thinking, I was like, oh man, I only have a few minutes with him. Like, I didn't know how long he was going to give me. And I really wanted to dive in to some of the issues that obviously everyone listening to this is concerned about. So, the more jokey he was, I was like, oh, he's cutting into my time. But then at some point, maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes into the second meeting, I was like, oh, this is what he does. He's really enjoying himself. And then you just have to kind of let it fly. I will tell you that at one moment, maybe an hour in, I said something about, just like the general state of politics. And I mentioned this in the Twitter thread. That's when he really also lit up separately, because then he could shut off his Twitter brain for a minute and just talk about what's going on here culturally. And obviously, for anyone listening to this that knows of me, he's had a very similar political evolution as I have. So we really kind of vibed on that thing, because I think he's realizing that politics has kind of changed massively over the last couple of years. And that's become pretty clear too from his tweets.
Another thing you talk about in your thread, and I'll read out the thread very briefly to get a bit more information from this, because most of the questions were based on this. I think part of the thread, this one got the most views. Accounts aren't just hit with labels that are obvious to insiders. They now found more, quote, secret labels which are causing shadow bans. My account was hit with all three: recent abuse strike, recent misinformation strike, and recent suspension strike. And then you talk about the tweets that are labeled not safe for ads, which affects visibility in the timeline. So my question to you then, Sebastian, welcome to the stage. We've got 30 minutes with Dave, and then we're going to open up the panel. But it's always good to have you. Dave, the question I have for you, and that's the question from the audience as well, is what are they doing regarding those labels? Are they just removing them all? Are they still trying to understand them? Do you have any idea what their plan is in relation to those hidden labels?
I don't know yet. They literally found it on Tuesday, which is when I got the call to come. Then I had my first late night meeting with him, the brief one, on Tuesday night. And then the bigger meeting was on Wednesday. So it truly was happening in real time. So once they discovered it on my account, I think they knew what to look for on some other people's accounts, and then they started finding it there. I will tell you one thing that you'll find interesting related to engagement is that when this not safe for ads label got put on some people's accounts, I'm sure you guys all remember when Elon took over. Before Elon, I basically, and I kid you not, I think in 10 years of Twitter or whatever I've been doing, I saw maybe 20 ads, like one ad a year, 2 ads a year, something like that. Then there was that moment for those 2 weeks when Elon took over where it seemed like every 5th or 7th tweet was an ad. Well, if you got hit with that not safe for ad label, what would happen is your tweet could not be above an ad or below an ad. So suddenly he gets all these new ads coming in, and now there's this secret label that hits you if you're above or below. You could actually really see. That's like one nugget where you can really see how that would affect engagement. So that was one interesting piece that felt like something kind of concrete that we got to.
That's like a new piece of information to me. I had no idea they had a, can't be below or above an ad. So I could really see how that would impact, people who are prolific tweeters, like everybody in here. Tweets a lot, and so if we can't appear below an ad or above an ad, that's it. That kills our account.
Right. So when we all saw that great jump, right? So for those 2-3 weeks when he took over, and there were two things that they kept talking about. There was an Elon bump, meaning there was just like a cultural excitement about him being there. So more people got on the platform. And then it was also World Cup. So there were two huge things happening. So there may have been some kind of cliff after that of just, World Cup was over. There was a little dying down of Elon excitement, that sort of thing. But then when you factor in something like this, and this was just the one that they could come up with at the moment, related to the ads, that there were all these new ads and now a huge amount of power users were probably hit with this label. That does explain some of it. So that's, it felt like a mystery movie. Like, okay, if we solve this, well, then what else are we going to extrapolate after that?
The next question I have, Dave, is something you've touched on in the thread and you've touched on in the video, and something I think the panelists would know about, but a lot of people in the audience wouldn't. And again, for the audience members that just joined, if you've got questions for Dave and other panelists in the 20 minutes, bottom right corner in that purple circle, you can put them there and we'll go through them. Dave, what triggered this interview, and correct me if I'm wrong, was you expressing the concerns you had with Twitter? Because when Elon first took over Twitter, there was a bump. And, the metrics were sky high, and obviously you said that the World Cup played a role, the excitement around Elon played a role. Can you tell us more about those metrics and what you saw prior to Elon, when Elon took over, and how the metrics look now? Because I know you did a deep dive into it beforehand.
Yeah. So, I mean, we obviously did that deep dive on my account. So what we saw on my account was basically from the point that I have been suspended twice on Twitter. The first one was in July of 21, and I was suspended for saying that vaccines were not working as promised and that mandates were coming. Both of those things turned out to be true, obviously. I was suspended and then unsuspended maybe 2 days later after they said there was an error. But of course, now we know from the Twitter files, it was not an error. It was either from someone at the government or an employee at Twitter just, going rogue, basically. That was one suspension. And then I was also suspended, I think it was this past September, for this tweet where all I did was comment on Jordan Peterson's suspension. So after both of those, we immediately noticed major drops in my account, in terms of retweets, visibility, and everything else, to the point that in September, I said on my show, and I really meant it at the time, that my goal was to leave Twitter by the end of the year. I felt it was a complete waste of time because my engagement, which once was awesome, I could say any silly thing or post a funny meme or link to my show. it had become just utterly useless. Thing where I used to get 5,000 retweets on anything, basically, I was down to 20. I wasn't seeing any responses. Just the whole thing kind of fell apart. This is the sort of anecdotal stuff that they're trying to figure out from people. But again, they still haven't been able to put all of those pieces together. That probably is why he's considering the nuclear option on this thing, because I don't know how long you can run a company that you're losing money on while you just keep discovering or uncovering more problems.
What do you mean? What do you mean by the nuclear option?
Well, that's my words, not his. But basically, when he said that he may have to start anew, meaning that at some point you're just plugging holes on this sinking ship, that maybe you really have to rewrite the entire code bottom up and create, like, in essence, an alternate Twitter and let this version of it die.
Dave, you alluded to how you and Elon went through a similar political evolution. Do you feel that perhaps the ill treatment that Elon received from Sanders and Warren and a couple of sort of far left politicians may have been a major motivation behind his purchase of Twitter?
Oh, 100%. I can't say that he said that to me, but judging by the way he lit up in that conversation, and when I said to him one thing that he really, I think I mentioned this on the show today, I said something like, in a sane world, a guy like me would be a lefty, but we don't live in a sane world. And that leads me to much more libertarian ideas on most things. And that's just how my political evolution's been. And I'm sure you guys remember when he posted that cartoon, talking about how the whole political landscape in the Overton window has shifted. So I do think partly what's going on here is the guy basically, all he has said, and I did not hear anyone, it's so funny that you listen to anything that they talk about Twitter on CNN or read in the New York Times. It's like they make it seem like he hired all these far right people and they just want to spread hate and Nazis and nonsense and all of this stuff. And it's like, it was so obvious to me, the guy just wants an even playing field. That's it. And that's all we wanted. Where we started this conversation back a while ago, it was like he just wants to revert it to 10 years ago. But the problem for, I would say, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and AOC and that crew is they flourish in a atmosphere when certain voices are censored. But on an even playing field, when you can honestly debate these ideas and not call for censorship and everything else, that's where they start to struggle. That's why they're calling him far right and everything else. It's not because he holds – what position does he hold that's far right? I mean, does anyone honestly know his position on abortion or whatever? Like, I tend to think, well, he said it himself. He's only voted Democrat until this past year where he voted for Mayra Flores in Texas. And he did say he would vote for DeSantis. But it's like the idea that a lifelong Democrat who was a media darling his whole life now is somehow far right. It's just crazy.
So I have a couple of questions for Aaron or for Dave, but I want to go to Aaron first.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. This is Aaron Cariotti. I'm one of the private plaintiffs on the Missouri v. Biden case, which is we're alleging government collusion with social media censorship. So I'm interested in your time at Twitter or the other investigation you've done into what happened to your own account, if there was ever any indications that any of the labels you were tagged with or any of the deboosting, shadow banning was at the behest of government agencies or government's preferred policies, that they seem to be doing a lot of this, particularly on COVID policy. You mentioned one tweet, I think, about the vaccines.
Yeah.
But the more we dig into the discovery on this case, the more we're finding that the government was doing this on other issues as well. So just, wondering if you got any sense, either from the folks at Twitter or your own look into what happened to your own account, whether this was entirely Twitter or Twitter, in some cases, acting at the behest of federal agencies.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're not going to be that satisfied with my answer for your purposes, which is no, I did not get an indication as we were discovering this stuff, whether it was nefarious actors inside or whether it was directed by somebody inside or whether it was because of government pressure. The one that I was really curious about was that July 21 one, because to me,
right.
That was the height of the pandemic. It was when, it's hard for us all to kind of roll the clock back on that, but it was before mandates. It was just as they started talking about mandates, and it was just when they started saying, that the vaccines weren't working. So I was very ahead on that. And my question to them was, well, if there was ever a tweet that was like the most perfect version of a tweet that the government might want to take down, this is it. There were so many things we were trying to do that I honestly don't think I got an answer on that, but I will follow up with them on that one.
Great. Thank you.
Nick, I know you got two questions. I'll ask one until you unmute. Dave, I know you said that Elon told you, when you asked him, is there anything you don't want me to share? He said, just share whatever's true. Is there anything that Elon told you or an employee told you when they requested specifically, they said, Dave, just that particular point, keep it confidential, which is very normal in any business. Was there anything at all they asked you not to share, or zero?
No, zero. Absolutely.
That's crazy.
Zero.
That's
Absolutely
ridiculous.
Zero. Yeah. Nothing.
That's
insane.
Yeah, go ahead. Of course, Sebastian.
Right. So first things first, Dave, it's been too long.
Seb, how are you, my man?
Good. It's been too long. Listen, you are a person watcher. You can get inside people. If you haven't seen it, I did an hour-long interview with Dave, and I answered things I've never answered on other interviews. It's at the top of my Twitter feed. So I'm going to ask you to use that eye, so that the show host, the kind of analytic eye, because for me, with just a couple of interactions I've had with Elon in the White House and now thanks to Mario's Spaces, and this is not meant to denigrate. I see a genius level individual, probably on the spectrum, who's found a new toy, and that new toy is politics. I don't think listening to him for the last few months on that big call we had with 90,000 people on Twitter Spaces, he's like a kid who's found politics. He didn't have a well-formed political identity, maybe kind of some amorphous libertarianism. And it's his commitment to freedom of speech that is guiding what he's doing today, but it's still very unformed. What impression did you get of his political identity or maturity when you spoke to him?
Yeah, I actually think that's a great question. I think, it's something like he has realized how dangerous the woke thing is. And it's not because he's a political beast. It's because he's a cultural beast and he likes to build things. And if you like to build things, you want to be surrounded by the best people. You simply don't care about skin color or gender or, sexuality or any of those things. So I think a lot of what now it seems like everything he's saying is political, but in a sane world, this stuff is not political. So if he says anything about, he makes a joke and it's related to the trans stuff or any of this, it seems like, oh, he must be a Republican now or something like that. But I think you're right. I think he's probably mostly a libertarian. He's probably happy to take government handouts and tax cuts for his companies when they're available. But that would be the same thing as Donald Trump, as Trump would always say, if you guys don't like the tax laws, then rewrite them. I'm just using your laws. But I don't think he's like purely political, but I also think that's sort of why when I mentioned that he lit up when I talked about my own political evolution and I was a lefty my whole life and all that, I think that's what he's realizing right now. He's realizing, boy, there's something really wrong with the world. There's something really, really wrong with the Democrat Party. And I think, I don't want to misquote his tweet. Maybe one of you have it. Right before the election, he basically said you sort of have to vote for Republicans. And that's something I've been saying on my show for quite some time. I always say you don't have to be a Republican, but you can't be a Democrat. And I think that that's sort of where he's at with things right now, that he likes America. I think he likes freedom. He likes capitalism. He likes creativity. And if you like any of those things, you cannot be for this top-down control that somehow now is connected between the Democrat Party, some level of the deep state, and most of what big tech has become.
And one last thing that's very helpful. When I got to ask him a question on one of the big spaces, the thing I found worrisome is I asked to see, more of the receipts, more divulging of the government working with Twitter, not just the DNC. And he gave this very kind of not standoffish, but hands-off answer when he said, I think there's some really great smoking guns, but Matt, I'll have to ask Matt and Barry. Was your impression that he's not delving into this stuff, he's just running a company and he's letting these two journalists do it for him?
Well, first off, I don't know what level of communication he has with them at this point. He did have a little bit of a falling out somewhat publicly with Barry when she said, she sent out some tweet about the new regime after he banned a couple of journalists for basically doxing his plane. So I'm not sure in terms of where he's at with them specifically, but I would say the broader answer to that is that the guy is running all of these freaking companies. He's lifting. I mean, the fact that he's responding to people on Twitter and trying to escalate, tickets to people and help all these people out, it's some degree of in over your head, but I don't really mean it like that, because I don't think he's in over his head. I think he wants all of this and he's doing the best he can, but he may just not have the answers to all of those things. So that's what I kept thinking the entire time. It's like, if I walk out of here and he says you can't say anything, it's like I would have accepted that too. And if he had said you can't even say you were here, I would have accepted that, because it was like, all right, he was trying to do something. He happened to then say to me, do whatever you want as long as it's true, which is amazing. Yeah.
It's a bandwidth issue.
Yeah. It might just be a bandwidth issue, truly. Like, you got to remember, think about the other things this guy is trying to accomplish. He's trying to put us on Mars. And now he's also dealing with, some yokel is upset about their blue check.
Thanks, Dave.
Hey, Dave, Justin Hart, when you left Twitter and you went north to Civic Center Plaza and you saw the wonderful degradation of my old hometown, did you talk to Elon about that crazy mess? What were his thoughts on his? It's literally like a block north, right? Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it was everywhere. It is truly everywhere in San Francisco. Yeah. We made a couple jokes about it. Like, basically he just cannot believe what San Francisco has become. I tried to link it to a lot of the politics that I talk about on the show often, about how these big governments and the endless putting of money into things and welfare state doesn't work and all that. But I didn't want to get too lost in that. So every time we went too far down that road, I felt like I had to kind of bring it back, because again, he was being super generous with his time, but I just didn't know when he was just going to say, okay, we got to wrap it up. It's 1:30 a.m. or whatever it is. But the state of San Francisco, I mean, that should be on television every day, because I have never seen anything like it. And I watched all 11 seasons or whatever it is of Walking Dead. Hey, did you get a chance to talk about family too? Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time. I know you're a new father. Yep. I'm a father of 8 myself. I know Elon's got me beat, but you have 2 newborns that are at least just under a year old now. Well, thanks for taking the time to come on. You doing okay? And did you guys get a chance to talk about family? I know that's one of his big issues too. Yeah, no, we've got a 5-month and a 3-month here. It's going incredibly well. They're happy and healthy, so that's the most important thing. No, we did not talk about family at all. It didn't come up. I gave him a quick bio on, I'm married, I just had kids, like something like that, but nothing. Then it was just like, let's get into the stuff. Alex, Caroline?
Hi. So yeah, just another question again. So I know they've been doing Twitter amnesty, and I just had shared a tweet from Twitter safety. So I know they haven't really cleaned up a lot of the specific policies yet. But in this tweet that I shared, that they say that they're going to be taking less severe actions on tweets that violate terms of service, instead of permanent suspensions for previous violations, that they're going to be, limiting the reach on things. I was wondering if you got to discuss any potential changes to the Twitter policy as far as, how it's worded. Because I know, like in past, he said that there hasn't been any real change to the policy and policies being enforced as it's been previously written. But this tweet from Twitter Safety from 2 days ago says that they're going to be taking less severe actions. So I was wondering if they've gone to kind of that.
Yeah, we didn't get too much into policy because we were so in the nitty gritty of what they were finding in the code, and that seemed to be really where we should focus. And then, as I said, looking at this list of other accounts, and then figuring out what was going on with my account. But for sure, I and this was discussed with David Sachs as well, like getting some of the messaging cleaned up. That really was what I wanted to do. Like, I really was able to accomplish what I wanted to do there, which is that I know that I personally feel better about what's going on at Twitter because I saw it and I relayed that information. And now, that thread went crazy viral. And now it's like a lot of other people. I looked at the responses and a lot of people are just like, okay, now I feel a little bit better. Like, let's see what he can do. And I think that's what he needed. He thinks he's, Superman or Iron Man, whatever it is. And it's like, he's one dude. He's living like a crazy, extraordinary life, but like he does need some help on some of this. So I think the fact that like I was able to go there see what I saw, report. I'm not even a reporter or a journalist, but say what I saw. I think that gives him a little bit of a leash so that the policies hopefully will follow that as stuff gets cleaned up.
I want to go to Caroline and Matthew for the final two questions, and then me, Nick, and Jim and Ian will wrap it up with a few more points. Dave, because I know you have to go, and then we'll open up the panel for our speakers that we have scheduled afterwards to continue the discussion. Caroline, I'll give you the next question. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me, Mario. Thanks for being here, Dave. I was curious, based on your visit to Twitter, what would you say the future of Twitter looks like? If you had one great takeaway for us, what would that be?
I think it really can be all of the things that we all wanted it to be. Remember when Twitter was fun and there were the hashtag games and it wasn't all just endless destruction and all of that stuff. But more importantly, I think it can actually be a tool for good. It's like, I think partly what's going on in the world right now is everything is so messed up because we've been reflecting the world back to us through a funhouse mirror. Like when social media was right at the beginning, and maybe by design it could only be right for so long. But when we all got on all these things 20 years ago, you could get some honest level of feedback from people, and you could communicate with people in a new way and connect with people that you lost and all that stuff. And it was awesome. And then unfortunately, whether it was because the government came in and started pushing this stuff, or the woke activists at Twitter, or whatever, or the diversity, equity, inclusion groups at Facebook, whatever it is, came in and they distorted everything. And then we all became kind of crazy. One of the things I say on my show all the time is if you stayed roughly sane in the last couple of years, I give you a lot of credit. Like, you're good in my book, as long as you're not completely insane. And a lot of people did go completely insane. So I really think this, and this gets to Seb's question too, he's just trying to reverse it back to that because he wants some level of normalcy and cannot believe how crazy it got. And I think that's how most of us realize it. And, years ago, I was always telling people Twitter isn't real life. And that kind of became a meme in and of itself now. But what happens on Twitter does leak into the real world. So we have to get that funhouse mirror to revert back to, a dressing room mirror where you can honestly see what's going on.
I've got a great audience question before you go, Matthew. And that question is from Joa Santos, who's also been on the panel. Did Elon talk much about X.com, which he owns and wants to make it into a super app, using Twitter to do it? Have you spoken to him about that?
No, not one word. Nothing that I heard.
That's a really interesting one. I'd love anyone in the audience that knows anything about X.com, do DM us, and hopefully the panelists that we have coming up could give us a bit of insight. I know it's a lot of it is hush hush.
That
Andrew,
doesn't seem like
Matthew.
It should be my last answer though, so I gotta do at least one more.
Yeah, we'll do it. Last one, Matthew. I'll give you the final question, and then I'll ask one question after that. Kind of your final thoughts on everything, Dave. Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Dave. So just wanted to highlight, because the conversation started off with sort of, whenever the negative perception that we all have of Twitter and the leadership of the last 5 or 7 or 10 years, like the word that absolutely encapsulated is shadow banning. And I want to highlight that it's the 5-year anniversary of when Project Veritas, this was an internal word. Come up with this. As an audience where we coined it. This was their word. James and PV team was January 2018, had a video with multiple videos, a series with Trust and Safety, with Twitter engineers. And they described, we just put, those MAGA people, those guys with the pickup trucks and their squirrel tails or shotgun racks, we shadow ban them. And they even talked about the different gradations of the algorithm, how people appear. And obviously there's a moral issue because they're not sharing that, and they're a public accommodations company. Obviously there's regulation of wedding cake bakers and pizzerias in Indiana. So, there's certainly some disingenuousness there. They also talked about something that has never really come up again, which is staff would go through celebrities' DMs.
Dave, just quickly, Matthew, just let you know, Dave has to jump off in 3 minutes.
I was just going to ask
my phone may die too, so I'm with you.
Any discussion of some of these moral issues? Obviously, we don't want to have a Sharia morality police, but the fact that there weren't controls before, are there going to be a better coded set so employees cannot be malfeasant in the way they abuse information access?
Yeah, Dave? Matthew, I'll try to give you a longer answer next time I see you in Miami for drinks, but I think the real answer to that is it was the subtext of everything. He does not want this lack of transparency. He wants an even playing field. So it's not like we sat there like really discussing the philosophical underpinnings of all of that the entire time. But it is clear that's why he bought the thing. He didn't, I really don't think he bought the thing to make money. I think he damn well wants to make it profitable. That's absolutely clear. But he bought the thing because he realizes how dysregulating it's been to society. And, you know, when you're the richest guy in the world, maybe you have an opportunity to leave the world a little better than you got it. So I think that's probably like the short answer to it.
Dave, I want to ask you a question. I value your time. Really appreciate you coming on. Well, I'll let you jump off to your meeting. Thank you so much for the thread. If you have final words before jumping off for the audience, please do so, and then we'll kick it off to the panel that we have coming up. Dave, the mic is yours for a final word for the audience.
Sure. Well, this has been an absolute blast, and I appreciate you guys inviting me. And, you know, it's just such a bizarre world we're in, but this spaces and all of the things that we're all trying to do here. Like, I don't know, obviously I don't know that much about everybody that's in this group, but like we could talk about this stuff, and it doesn't matter if we agree politically or anything else. I think if we take the spirit of what this country was founded upon, about individual rights, and then we apply that to what we all want Twitter to be, or what most of us want Twitter to be, which is a place that respects that. And you know what? People might say mean things to you, but we shouldn't be destroying everybody and ruining people's careers and all of this stuff. And especially what we shouldn't be doing is censoring political ideologies to the point that they either go underground, where they're just going to continue spreading, or where you get this distortion back. That's what I'm worried about more than anything else. You know, I keep saying this on my show. It's like, man, if I could just snap my fingers, and I think this is true for most of us, if we could just snap our fingers and go back to 1995, right? It's before all this nonsense, and be warned what is going to happen because of all this. It's awesome. My life has become better than I can possibly imagine because of all this. But it also comes with something very, very dangerous, right? With great power comes great responsibility. And it's like we now have a chance through this guy to maybe reset some of this stuff. I think that's the opportunity here. And I don't mean this as like some sycophant. I'm not a sycophant for people or politicians or athletes or anything. But, you know, good people do put things out in the world. And when they do put something out in the world, I think if you're a good person, you have a responsibility to help them do that. And that's what I'm going to keep trying to do. It sounds like what a lot of you guys are trying to do. And let's just keep going.
I'm muted. Dave, really appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot, man. And you're welcome to jump in anytime in the future. Hopefully you'll get another thread soon. Thanks a lot, Dave.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Good stuff, man.
Take care, man. Bye-bye. That was a great discussion. I'd love, because I know we've got a lot of panelists here that can give us a lot more insight into the discussion of censorship. I do want to go to Zach. Zach, you've got a really interesting story. I'm bringing up, okay, a lot of people have dropped. Let me bring a few more people up. Nick even dropped. Let me bring Nick up. But Zach, are you still with us? Okay, did Zach drop as well?
No,
Zach, you're here.
He's here.
I'm here.
How are you, Zach? What are your thoughts after this discussion, man?
I'm great.
A few minutes. Yeah, give us. You're a Google whistleblower. It's like a very quick one-word summary of your the insight that you can bring to the panel. Would love your take on the discussion now, your take on Twitter's position now, and what you expect to see in the next few months based on your experience.
Okay. So what people mostly don't know is that I was working with Dave Rubin to try to get him uncensored on the inside of YouTube when I was working there. And this kind of led me into a deep dive of YouTube's censorship system. And I basically found out that there were a lot of these labels that were being applied to Dave Rubin that was being fed into the artificial intelligence machine. And a lot of the things that he was saying about these labels being applied at Twitter really echoed a lot with what I was experiencing within YouTube. And so it's this mess of no one knows exactly what's happening, except that there are labels that are being applied. And when those labels are being applied, that's fed into this censorship engine, which just is determining what we can see and what we can't. And I've got to catch a plane right now. I'm actually...
No, I appreciate it, Zach. Would love you in the future. Yeah, no worries, man. And that kind of gives me... that's the next point I want to bring up, Ian, is that the same censorship we're seeing on Twitter now, and that's being uncovered, the same thing we saw with Twitter Files. Twitter Files, as name redacted, brought to our attention earlier. Twitter Files, Twitter hiring ex-FBI employees that influenced a lot of decisions within Twitter. The same thing's happening on other social media platforms. And Mark
much greater
Andreessen
degree.
kind of implied that slightly. Yeah, it depends. I think it depends on different social media platforms. But Meta, for example, does look like they're doing it on a bigger
That's
degree.
right. And I think Google, this is something that's been approached in Congress itself, where they testified. You have, I forget exactly when, it might be 2017 or 2018, when a algorithm expert testified before Congress and explained how Google is suppressing any sort of conservative search results from being shown in the news.
That was Robert Epstein, I believe, who did the
That's him.
Creek
Yeah.
Line.
Thank you. Yep.
By the way, Nate, I'd love you on stage as well. I've just sent you through an invite. But if anyone hasn't read the thread, and I know I've got a lot of panelists, I'll give them the mic. I don't want to hog the mic for too long. But if anyone's read the thread, it just feels like there's, I think Dave described it as a dumpster fire. It just feels like Elon just took over a complete mess of a platform. And the results will take a long time. I think it will take a year or two to really see the results.
Everything, right? I mean,
but Ian, what happened? Like Dave was talking about, the engagement on Twitter was a bit weird. Like when Elon first joined, it picked up, and then now it's kind of seeming weird. What does he mean by weird? What are you seeing on the engagement on Twitter?
Is it
across the board?
Right, it's been down for a lot of users because they feel like they're being shadow banned or something, right? Like their tweets are just not showing on people's feeds. I mean, they are showing on a lot of people's feeds, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't be getting any sort of engagement at all. But the numbers are a lot lower than when Elon first took over. So something has changed there. Like the way it shows tweets for you and tweets chronologically. Before, it would automatically lock to whatever it is you saved it to, and now it's not doing that. So a lot of the numbers are obviously down, and Elon has to work on that. He did promise that in February, which is just a few days from now, they will be changing it so that people can save the setting from before you, which is a recommended feed. Obviously the name needs to be changed to the chronological timeline, so that way they can actually see the latest tweets without having to change the setting manually every single time they log into Twitter. So that is one solution. The other problem is that, like, why aren't people's tweets showing up at all? Like, there are people on my timeline that I've been following for ages, and I don't see their tweets at all, right? It's only after I reply to them once or twice that it starts, filling up my timeline. And that is something that they really do need to address, because it is severely impacting users who, I would say, not low follower users, so people with, less than 5,000 followers probably aren't experiencing this, and people who are basically celebrities, meaning, 500,000 and upwards, like your own account. I don't think you're really noticing this. I'm not really noticing this either, because my tweets get amazing engagement, but I'm seeing this with a lot of mid-level accounts, meaning, anywhere between 30,000 followers to, say, 300,000 followers. These accounts have been really severely impacted by the way the algorithm works.
I think what Dave,
and we're seeing one quick question. Sorry, Sam. Just one quick question to Ian and Alex, and then I'll give you Sam, Aaron, Jim, Nick, Jim, the mic. But one last question, guys. The metrics across the board on Twitter, are we seeing less users on Twitter? Are we seeing less engagement across the board? Or is it purely for specific users?
Specific users. Like, I don't think engagement itself has gone down. Like I said, with my own account, I haven't really noticed any drop in engagement at all. If anything, the videos that I post get way more engagement than they used to. Like, it used to be sort of capped, like, back in the day, right before Elon took over. I would get a maximum of 30,000 views. Now I'm seeing 100,000, 200,000 views per tweet, right? So I'm obviously not affected by this, and whatever change they did make was actually positive for my account. But I can't say that the same thing is true for a lot of mid-level accounts that are, have lower followers than I do. They're not seeing as much engagement. Like, you're not even seeing their tweets, and that is something that they have noticed. If you go into the analytics at Twitter, right, it's analytics.twitter.com, you can actually track what your engagement is. And if it shows you, if it's like redlining, it's down like 40% or something, it will actually show you there. So you can actually see if you've been affected by this, the change in the algorithm.
Yeah, I used to have huge engagement when I was on the radio back from 2007 up to 2010, 2006 to 2010. I would get massive engagement on Twitter. I went to Congress and I shut it down. But when I left Congress and I was engaging on Twitter, it was nothing. And then even before I started doing Twitter Spaces a little bit, I was getting just immediate massive engagement. So there have been changes, but I see so many people complaining. And they also said that For You section was causing problems for people. I'm not so convinced that that's the problem with it. I think it is just some of these Frankenstein remaining dead flesh things that he's dealing with.
I was definitely affected by the dead flesh thing that you just spoke of. Sorry to interrupt, Sam. I was locked out of, I wouldn't say locked out of my account, but rather locked out of certain features on my account. Like normally, if you want to buy advertisements, you can, right? I mean, you just go to ads.twitter.com and then you apply it to your account. When I was affected by this, I could not even buy ads because it would not automatically populate the account space, right, where it says which accounts do you want this ad to be applicable to. It would not find my account. Like you couldn't even search for me in the search bar. Like you had to be following me in order to see my name even populate there. And for a while, sometimes it would show up, sometimes it wouldn't. For the most part, it wouldn't, and I wasn't even able to. Let's say I'm using a business account or somebody else's account, right? I'm logged in there, and I want to share a piece of media using the Creative Center or like the Media Center. I could not even share any tweet or image with my own @StillGray account. Like it just wasn't populating. It would show you a number of parody accounts that people have made of me over the years, right? and those would populate just fine, but my own account would not even be visible. So I was like effectively, I was visibility filtered, so to speak.
We had a couple.
So we'll go quickly. If you, Justin, you just dropped out. I'm not sure if you're speaking. I'll go to Alex, Sam, and Justin.
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch on something that Ian had mentioned. So a lot of accounts that are higher engagement weren't noticing a drop-off when they introduced the For You feature. Basically because of how the algorithm and For You and recommended works is if you engage with an account consistently, you're going to continue to see that account. The reason why lower level and mid level accounts weren't seeing that same experience and they were seeing lower engagement is because if they're getting lower engagement, that's going to continue to be the case. They're not going to get any new exposure if, it's not algorithmically being tailored to, other people. So a lot of people saw the drop off when they were defaulted to the For You rather than the following, which was the default before. And I just shared a tweet up, in the nest from Andrea, who's a designer at Twitter, that shows like a preview of what the new feature is going to look like. So you're going to be able to control your feeds and control which one you want pinned. And then, like you've already mentioned, they're going to remember which one you had selected when you close the app, because right now it defaults back to For You, which I think that was the main issue, that people weren't realizing they were on the For You feed because they'd close the app and then come back and it would be defaulted to For You rather than the one that they had selected, which most users prefer following from what I hear. So just wanted to share that one.
It's something that Dave highlighted, which I think is going to become pretty significant the more people think about it, is the serious problem Elon has in front of himself. Anyone who's been involved in software development will know, Twitter has had 17 years of different devs, engineers, software engineers, effectively plaster casting over issue after issue. And, for this platform to work how Elon wants it to work, it may very well be that they have to do a complete rebuild behind the scenes, which is, a year to 2 years work. And all of these fixes that they're applying, as Dave pointed out, and I think we're seeing it all the time, they apply a fix and it creates a whole load of glitches. And that is a symptom of a product that's not been built from the ground up. That's a symptom of a product that is built up as, tiramisu. It's a perfect analogy. That conversation with Dave has made me sit here thinking, holy shit, Twitter is a complete mess and it's going to need some serious fixes, or it's going to probably, most likely, and I brought it up when Dave was on, most likely Elon's going to have to do exactly what he did with Tesla and with SpaceX and effectively start from scratch after trying to sort of work with existing engineering.
I think it probably will try to start from scratch, but you should also know this is something that plagues a lot of these companies there in San Francisco, just the SaaS and tech companies. I guarantee you anyone who's worked with Salesforce will know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, this is something that's got legacy upon legacy, but people's data in their business is built into there. So they're kind of very sticky in there, right? And they're not going to abandon Salesforce. Whereas a lot of people, if they don't have the experience they want, will maybe choose elsewhere from Twitter. I know I have several friends who have tried over the last 3 weeks to do this very interesting test. You might try it yourself, which is they've tried to post a tweet just publicly and see what type of engagement it gets over like a 12-hour period. And then they'll post the same tweet, but before they do, they'll take their account private. And they say all of a sudden engagement goes through the roof. So I don't know if that's an algorithm thing or what's going on, but this is something with all these tech companies hitting 10 and 15 plus years, they're looking back at this legacy code and they wish they could start from scratch.
So I want to get,
and they can migrate the data. I mean, I think that'll probably be the approach. They'll do a rebuild on, I mean, again, the software languages update, constantly. So I can see them doing a rebuild and then migrating the data and doing this all behind the scenes and then just literally doing a relaunch in 2 years or whatever, and all the problems go away. In the meantime, they are just going to keep applying these fixes and we're going to keep getting glitches. And I think this may be why Twitter just did absolutely no updates for pretty much a decade in reality. Yeah, they added a few features here and there, but they couldn't even get the edit button working, over a sort of 10 to 12 year period of talking about it. And I think we're starting to understand a little bit about what's been going on with Twitter behind the scenes, just what Elon has inherited here.
Yeah. So let's get Aaron in here, and Tracy, I do want to get you in as well, but Caroline's also been waiting as well. So.
Yeah, I had to document in my legal declaration some of the ways in which the shadow banning had functioned on my account. And since last year, I posted so much information on, scientific studies about the vaccines or about other COVID policies. I think my account was probably subjected to more deboosting shadow banning than most, simply because of the kind of content that I was frequently posting on Twitter. And a couple of experiences that I'm just wondering if other users have had. One was, there was a time where my total number of followers was capped. So I would get notifications of new followers, but the total number of followers would not go up. And then I discovered after a while that people would reach out to me saying, I thought I'd been following you, but then I looked and the system had automatically unfollowed you. So I wasn't even following you anymore. And if this was just one or two people, I would have thought, well, maybe they accidentally unfollowed me and didn't realize it. But I had many, many people reaching out and saying this. And some of those people had to do that every couple of weeks. So they would refollow me and then the system would boot them off again. And so it seemed to be particularly users with a higher following themselves that would get sort of shuffled off the stage as new followers would come on. So I think the algorithm was operating in that way for a while. And I think there were also time-limited sort of smackdowns, because I would post things that I knew would be sort of controversial vis-a-vis CDC guidance or whatever. And then I could feel very clearly that the algorithm had me in Twitter jail for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, typically was the period of time. And I could also feel the day in which that was lifted and my engagements started going up again, and my the feedback in the comments and so forth started going up again. And so I think there's such a patchwork quilt of different sort of piled upon algorithmic mechanisms. One is this 0 to 300 scale, where everyone was given a number at any given time of basically how much reach you were going to get on Twitter. That was revealed, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the Twitter files. But I think on top of that, there were also tweet-specific sort of punishments that were time limited and that would kind of, put you or put any of your tweets that had certain types of content in Twitter jail for a while. And, I think what happened, especially I suspect, with the back and forth with government agencies and, people sort of finding creative ways around saying what they wanted to say without saying it as explicitly, I think they kept just adding patch upon patch or new algorithm fix, upon the old system. And now I think now they've gotten to the point where nobody can find their way through that maze anymore. And it sounds like Elon's having a hard time unwinding that. It's sort of like the tax code. It never gets smaller and simpler. It always just, these new special situations arise. You make a new law or a new algorithm to try to cover them. And then, before long, you have this unwieldy monster that, even the tax attorneys can't navigate very well.
Tracy, I'll let you jump in because I want to keep this one of the short spaces that we do to cover a point, discuss it with Rubin. I'd love you to jump in, and then we've got a few questions quickly to Caroline, Nate, and Kyle. But Tracy, the mic is yours. Good to have you.
Hey, thanks. I just wanted to say thanks for having me up here. Now it all makes sense why everybody's asking these absolutely mindless questions of everybody and then hoping that they answer. Because I guess there was like an inside track to this algorithm that's keeping you relevant should you ask questions and get engagement rather than just having that be organic. People are like asking the most ridiculous questions. It's getting crazy, but this answers the whole thing. Alex, can you go into that a little bit more before we end here? Because that's really, really interesting to me.
You're just talking about the For You versus the following feeds?
Yeah, can you explain how that works? Because I'm not going to do that because I hate it, but I'm curious how it works.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much you use Instagram, but this has been a problem on Instagram as well. So basically, again, we don't know the actual algorithm, but any type of algorithmic feed will feed off of your own behavior, and then it will basically create an echo chamber of your own behaviors because it will only show you stuff that you're constantly engaging with. So after a while, it then just becomes a very limited amount of users. Like you'll have your top 20 users that you engage with on Twitter, but that creates the problem of you not seeing any new content. Whereas on the following feed, you're seeing a chronological feed of people that you follow, as well as people that they retweet as well. But if I'm only seeing the top 20 users, and that's even a big number, maybe the top 10 users that I'm engaging with, I'm not seeing any new users, and it's naturally going to lead to lower level and mid-level Twitter users to have lower engagement because, for example, I would say maybe the top 10 users that I'll engage with are like, Elon Musk, Ian, like a bunch of people in this space, but then that leaves out, I'm following like over 1,400 other accounts. I'm probably not going to see any of the tweets from those accounts if I'm just staying on the For You page. And since that's now the default, a lot of users are probably scrolling on the feed, not realizing that they're on the For You feed and they're, they don't notice. So that's just a little bit of my thoughts on it and stuff that I've noticed from being, an Instagram user in the 2 years that I was suspended from Twitter is that a lot of people were experiencing that same thing on Instagram when they made the change to an algorithmic feed. So that's how that works. And, I think they're making that change. So.
Thank you.
Caroline, I think you were next, and I think we were going to go to you. What's your question?
I had a question for Mario. A couple weeks ago, I was on one of your spaces. I was just listening, and all of a sudden, the space ended for me. I didn't have my phone in my hand, but the audio in my AirPod, it just stopped. And so I went over and picked up my phone, opened Twitter, and this banner came up on the screen, and it was like, "You have Mario blocked." And I was like, I absolutely don't have Mario blocked. I was just curious, if you have seen any weird things with your account. I've never had anything like that happen with anyone else's account.
Cool. So I've got a cool answer that gets good engagement, and I've got the truth. So the cool answer is, Caroline, I think, I'm having so much impact on the world that the deep state is trying to destroy my account, and they're trying to block people immediately from me. So it's all part of a plan to shut me down because, I'm influencing the world to such a massive degree. The truth is I have no idea. It was funny, Sam, about the Matrix. It's funny how Andrew Tate's lawyer goes they ask him about the Matrix, hey, I have a professional job. I don't talk about things like this. I don't think it has anything to do with the Matrix. And that was Andrew Tate's lawyer. But yeah, it's weird, Caroline. We've seen a lot of glitches here and there. I've had people unfollowed from my account without knowing. I think Alex or Trey, someone mentioned that earlier. It's off, but And I'm glad you're not blocking me, and I'm definitely not blocking you as far as I know, because I was looking at your account earlier today. So we're chill. We're good. We're still friends.
I will say
Thanks,
that,
Mario.
yeah, I will say that the For You tab is pissing a lot of people off, and I don't mean people in this space. I mean people particularly on the left, because they're not following either me or Elon Musk, but whenever we interact with each other, it shows up on their timelines and they rant about it. Like I do a name search sometimes, because I do that because it's fun. And I see people complaining about, why am I seeing Inmal Strong's and Elon Musk's tweets in my timeline? I don't even follow either of them. And it's just funny to see that. But it definitely has gained me a sizable chunk of followers, I think, from people.
Ian, you've got the silver medal. Silver medal for the most people blocked. The gold medal goes to Kim. The silver medal goes to you.
How many people does he have blocked? I have like 14,000 people blocked.
Kim has 28 million, more than the users on Twitter. 280 million, sorry. he has a system where he blocks someone 3 times.
Oh my! It's no wonder no one can really join his spaces, and people complain about it when he's like.
I love. This is a joke, by the way. Anyone listening, like, I love Kim, and Kim was there. I think Kim was in my first Twitter space ever since my comeback. He was there debating the economy with Tom Nash. So me and Kim go not way back, but way back in Twitter space terms. And he always likes to grill me, and I should start grilling him too to make it
He's
even.
a great guy. You should grill him. Yeah, I mean, he's he grills everybody else like he's like a detective. You know, he asks hard questions, but nobody asks him the hard questions. So maybe
he might block you, Mario. Then we're all.
I do. No, he gives me leeway. So I'm one of the few. Gives me leeway to kind of. I used to challenge him a lot before. But now I just get other speakers to challenge him and get blocked by him, so it's easy.
I made the rookie mistake of interrupting Kim on the first spaces I joined you guys with. I'm never doing that again.
Kim is funny.
That was scary.
I want to go to
Sebastian's the hardest core guy. You do not talk over Sebastian.
Sebastian.
I'm speaking, and he does.
It's amazing. He could take you down.
Tear people down.
He's such a good speaker. But both Sebastian and I want to get back. I want to go to Name Redacted and Kyle to kind of wrap up the space. But both Sebastian and Kim have, for me, some of the best voices and the most best way to articulate points. It's just so easy to just get attention. I like to listen to them as well, and I disagree with them, but I'm like. But I like their voice too much to disagree with them.
Seb has this amazing radio show. I don't know if you've listened to it. It's got millions of listeners every day. And, it's just him speaking for 2 hours with his regular voice. I mean, this is his regular voice, right? But it's like he's such a commanding presence that even if you disagree with him, you cannot help but pay attention to what he's saying.
I want to I want to kind of wrap up. I want to wrap up the space with final thoughts from Kyle and Name Redacted, Nick. Guys, you've both been in the space so many times, giving us insight on the influence, especially with the Twitter files, to some of the regular guests, on the impact or influence of the FBI and other governmental organizations on Twitter. Would love your thoughts on what was discussed now with Dave, and your thoughts on whether that is pretty much wiped out of Twitter now, and how do you think Elon will deal with that issue, with that pressure from organizations like the FBI, etc., with him kind of attacking them through the Twitter files. Carl, maybe you want to take that one first.
Yeah, I don't think that the FBI is capable of any sort of meaningful self-reflection, and I don't think that it has any reason to slow down. It just got another $1.5 billion from the omnibus bill that is going to feed their funding. I think that the people that are involved in Bronze Griffin are going to continue doing that program and engaging with tech companies, because Twitter is by no means the biggest. In fact, it's one of the smaller of the tech companies. They've got massive amounts of money that come in from these other ones, and they engage with them, whether it be Amazon Web Services and so on. So there's no real indication that should happen. I do think it's interesting to note the tiramisu model, and that there are it actually makes the government's job a little bit more easy to disguise, I think, because if you have tech that is struggling, if you have code that is failing, if you have this sort of ongoing censorship and some legacy employees that still have an ideological bend that they're willing to exercise, and you add that all in to the government going in and adding their 2 cents and weighing down on the scale, that's a really, really difficult problem to suss out. Like, how do you even figure out who is who? How do you ever attribute any particular action? Like my buddy Real Steve Friend, who's one of my partners in whistleblowing, has had a lot of his stuff search banned and shadow banned, and so and they're specifically maligning the FBI by just exposing some of the dirty laundry of the bureau. Is that an accident? Is that a code problem? Is that because there's an issue with media tweets that have text or code or what do you call it, like visual text, or is it an actual request by the bureau? And so when you have that many possibilities, I think it's really scary because we can't really get to the bottom of it easily. And I'm going to co-sign on loving Sebastian's voice. When I get him to laugh when we're off camera, that's actually my favorite thing to do, because if you say something that he's not ready for, it's like a really good hearty belly laugh. It's like a
Sebastian laughs. No, I'm joking. But I want to get Kyle. I want to catch Kim laughing, because Kim has two laughs. The one where he just laughs at someone or what they're saying because he disagrees. That one is an evil laugh. But I've never caught him. I don't know if he's laughed on a call we've had. I don't know. But I want to catch him where he's genuinely laughing at something. I think he does. I think it would be like such a deep, warm laugh. But I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he sounds to me a lot more serious.
I'm in last place when it comes to the blocks. I have 0 people blocked on Twitter, and I don't intend to block anybody.
Yeah, I used to not block anyone, but then it gets to a stage where I have you can count the people I block on two hands, probably less than 10. But then I have a rule where I unblock them after a month because I just feel bad blocking people. It's like I'm the opposite of Ian. Ian blocks more people than I have as followers.
Yeah.
Let's see.
and by the way, just to add to what Kyle was saying, so I want to ask Name Redacted a question, because you had a post recently, and Attorney General Jeff Landry down in Louisiana, who I'm talking to, and we want to try to bring him up because you had some stuff that you revealed on that. But I'm curious, Name Redacted, how do you see some of the stuff that you've been laying out there? Like, you've exposed hundreds of CIA and FBI agents that have gone out of those agencies and into social media. How do you see what you saw Dave Rubin talking about kind of sinking into some of the stuff that you've been revealing?
Well, first off, these CIA agents and FBI agents, all these people working at social media, they expose themselves. They put their profiles publicly on LinkedIn. Some of them have Twitter accounts, and they don't hide their former work experience. So, secondly, with what Dave Rubin's experience was, I think Elon has 2 issues. One of them is probably easier to fix because I'd say probably over 90% of the Twitter staff was left-leaning and probably very hard left-leaning. So that's probably an easier part to fix. The second part that I don't know if he's fixed, and you can read in the thread I posted up in the nest up top, is what I found last weekend. Jack Dorsey testified to the Senate Intel Committee, referring to the law enforcement agencies and the government as their partners, and then he asked the Senate for more help with their partnerships with law enforcement, and asked for a single point of contact because they're getting bombarded from multiple agencies. So Jack, this whole idea that Twitter was pressured to censor is completely false. Like, Jack Dorsey and Facebook and Google, they were willing partners in the system that CISA pretty much set up as sort of the central player to connect social media companies and the other government agencies to basically push material out on the platforms that they wanted censored. So this was a voluntary effort by Jack Dorsey. So I laid that out. It's his own words. So Elon Musk is he still participating? CISA has these calls every month where they discuss the agenda, and Facebook is the industry lead on those calls. This is all from the deposition in the Landry case. Aaron, that's the one you're involved in, I assume. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Landry's the AG from Louisiana, and formerly Schmitz. He's now a senator. He filed it from Missouri, but they have a new AG now in the case. And yeah, Nick, I could talk a little bit about CISA, which is agency that most Americans have never heard of. Brilliant government acronym, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Just in case you wondered what they did, they put the same word twice in their acronym. So they're all about security, and they were stood up around 2016, 2017 to protect us from cyber attacks, which seems like a pretty sensible thing for a government agency to do. But within a year or two into their existence, they seem to have decided that the main threat to our digital infrastructure in the United States was not computer viruses or malware or things of that nature, but the main threat was what they called, in a wonderful Orwellian euphemism, cognitive infrastructure. So you might wonder, what is cognitive infrastructure? Well, cognitive infrastructure is your ideas. Cognitive infrastructure is the content that you or your friends may want to post on social media. So they very quickly, only a year or two into their existence, got into the censorship game. And they partnered with 4 private entities, one at Stanford, one at University of Washington, and 2 other nonprofits that were sort of like revolving door between government agencies and the nonprofit world. So a very incestuous sort of coalition of this agency and 4 private nonprofits. And I think this agency was sort of, as far as I could tell, at the center of the government censorship regime, with various spokes going out to other federal agencies, whether HHS or Department of Defense or Department of Homeland Security. So far in that case, I think there's at least 17 federal agencies that have been implicated. But this one, CISA, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, seems to have been quarterbacking a lot of this work. I just want to make one other legal point that I think is important for folks. There's a lot of folks on Twitter, there's a lot of folks on this call who don't engage with Twitter in order to share their own content, by and large. They rarely tweet, they rarely post. They follow some people that they're interested in, and they go on Twitter to get news or to get opinions or to get perspectives. And that's more or less how they engage with the platform. And the Supreme Court has made it clear that the First Amendment right to free speech, which the government has to respect, that right exists not just for the person who wants to say something, right? So the speakers can get on here and complain about how we've been shadow banned, and Twitter did this to me, and Facebook did that to me, and so forth. And that's definitely a problem, right? If you're on the speaking end and you're not allowed to say what you want to say, or you could say it, but you're speaking into the void because the algorithm sort of erases it from existence. But the Supreme Court has made it clear that free speech exists not just for the speaker, but also for the listener. And they've made it clear in several precedent-setting cases that the First Amendment right to free speech is important, not only for the right to convey information, but also the right to receive information, the right to receive information from both sides of a debate on a debated question, for example, so that people can make up their own minds. So even if you haven't personally experienced censorship on social media platforms, because of how you engage with it, or you just, post pictures of kittens or something like that no algorithm is going to ban, you may also still be impacted by the censorship regime, just in terms of what you're able to see and the information that you're able to get. And that's why I think this is an important issue, for all Americans, and not just ones with, a bigger following or a potential microphone that are being sort of put under the thumb of the censorship regime.
Kyle, I saw you react. I'll let you quickly respond, Kyle, and then we'll go to Bricksuit. Final quick words. Nick, final quick words, and then we'll wrap up the space. Kyle, the mic is yours.
Thanks so much. Hey, I really appreciate what Aaron had to say and bringing it back to this cognitive infrastructure discussion. It's so important that people realize, and you call it Orwellian. Let's just break it down to what they're saying. They're doing thought policing. and that they actually think they have a mandate to do so is sort of incredible. They've couched it in sort of intel terms and government speak to do that. But this has actually permeated other members and other parts of the intelligence community. And it's kind of timely that we're talking about it in that setting. I literally got a message today earlier, which I've already gone to Congress with. And the statement was as follows. I had a colleague, a former colleague, since I'm not really with the Bureau at this point, who is being investigated by the FBI for God knows what stupid procedural thing they're doing because they're removing clearances from a number of people that have gotten engaged in whistleblowing. And this person was queried about their stance on January 6th and if it was or was not as big a deal as 9/11. Like that has some sort of bearing on your job. They also wanted to know this person's stance on LGBT issues, which is irrelevant as long as you don't take them into your job. And then they were also queried about their religion. And so when you start getting into the business of thought policing, which is what we've seen our government get into, of course it's going to come down in censorship on this kind of stuff, but it's incredibly dangerous because it's also going to happen internally. So there's an external phase that's going to affect private citizens and their ability to digest information and have access to the full spectrum of good and bad opinions, whatever those may be, and they should be able to suss that out because they're free Americans. But the other part of it is that our government is actually trying to do it internally as well to the agencies, and they're trying to get this sort of thought purity inside of the intelligence community and project across the general spectrum. And that is such a dangerous place to be because American government should represent all Americans. That's the entire reason why we have a representative democracy or a representative republic. And if we're not going to have that, we're going to end up in totalitarianism in a very, very fast way. And I don't know if people understand how bad that gets, but those who have seen the wars against this kind of thing, it's really bad and it gets bad really fast. So Kyle, I just want to be aware of thought policing.
Did I hear that right? That they're doing ideological purity testing, like political purity testing in the federal government on federal employees. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. As of today, I was just informed that people like what your religion is. By the way, there's no ability to have that discussion within the federal government. Like anybody who's been to any sort of HR training should know this. But the people that are running the FBI, and I imagine some of the other agencies, do not have any, they have substantive background. They have background that is related to their specific field and maybe their agency's like overall mission, but they're not trained. Like FBI agents are not trained to do HR, but they're the managers. And so if they're doing this wild stuff, and they are, and people can listen to my podcast and hear what they talked to my buddy Steve Friend about when they interviewed him, these things are ongoing and it's just getting worse. They're not scared of it.
Isn't there like a First Amendment argument against this? I mean, some way that these FBI agents who have been terminated, perhaps unlawfully, could they fight back against this? Because, I mean, this seems like a freedom of religion, freedom of thought sort of issue, right?
Yeah, so if you go back and you look at what sort of protections you have as a whistleblower and other things, there's actually no teeth in these. And who's going to investigate it? So, Ian, you just have to ask yourself the question, who's going to go investigate the DOJ? Who's going to prosecute DOJ for the things that it's done wrong? Who's going to hold the FBI accountable? Is it the Office of the Inspector General, who literally goes out and makes a recommendation, and then DOJ says, thanks so much, we'll do nothing about this and let this person retire? So that's been the business as usual. It's just gotten to the point where I think that more people have the ideological bend than not at the top of these organizations. So we're actually starting to see it poke out into public life. And when that starts happening, that's what people are realizing right now. Some of this stuff has been there for a long time. I mean, whistleblowers have always been treated terribly by our federal government because it's antithetical to the workings of the government, which wants to keep going. It's just something I want you guys to be aware of. When they're policing thought, they can come for all of us.
And I think just to make that rabbit hole a little deeper before we move on to Brick, like Nick, name redacted, this CISA organization is really scary, and I didn't quite realize it until just these Twitter files started to come out. They tried to proclaim that this was 2020 was the most secure election ever, and then you realize the security that they were thinking about was shutting down Donald Trump, and similar things, not trying to make sure that machines didn't get hacked. But I mean, I know you've looked at this closely. How bad is the CISA issue? Because I think that adds right on top of some of the stuff that Kyle's talking about.
Well, 2 points on that. There's one issue that's a problem with CISA is that Vijaya Gadde at Twitter was working there on some advisory committee all of 2022. So that's sort of a conflict, right? If they're also going and telling Twitter what posts to take down. Secondly, the whole point of CISA is this apparatus that they created of censorship and what Kyle said of like basically thought policing was set up under this guise of like Russian disinformation and why Trump originally got elected and how to like avoid that, for the 2020 election. So they started out of the gates. CISA was founded in November of 2018, and they admitted in the deposition that's in that thread that they started right away having these monthly conference calls with social media in 2018. And the whole purpose was to police like thought and control the narrative. And out of the gates, the purpose was the 2020 election, and they were aggressive with it. And that apparatus, and they were successful. And that's why you have this, everyone saying 2020 was the safest election, which is, whatever. But now that they have this apparatus, this machine in place to like work with social media, to like censor whatever they want, as you've seen with COVID and whatnot, they're using it for everything. COVID, vaccines, Russia, Ukraine. That is what needs to be shut down, because that we are not like a free country. It's a total infringement on our First Amendment rights to have the government working and social media partnering willingly with them to like take down and do whatever they say. Basically, the government is writing the policy for Facebook and Google. That's why Project Veritas's video got taken down on YouTube. And then to go a little deeper along this same timeline, starting in 2018, there was a flood of like over 300 former intelligence community people that were hired by social media companies. And you have former CIA officers that are managing misinformation departments at Facebook and Google. All started in 2000.
This is huge info. I mean, and we're going to keep kind of expanding that discussion, particularly as stuff breaks out over time here in the space. But I want to pitch it over to Brick before Mario goes in to start closing things down. Brick, what you got? Brick Suit, you there? Can you unmute? You're not muted.
Yeah, I think he's glitching. All good.
No,
I think Brick Suit will have you.
Never mind.
No, well, he tried to unmute, didn't work out. But we'll wrap it up. Any final words? Ian, Jim, Nick, any final quick words before we wrap up the space?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think we are living in a brave new world, and it's up to us to figure out how to traverse it. And right now, it looks like Elon's offering us a path. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. Yeah, why don't you go first, Brick?
Yeah.
Can't hear us now. Yeah. Can you hear us, Brick?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Mike is yours, man. All yours.
Man.
Now, let's wrap it up, man. You got the final word.
Thank you for bearing with me there. I just want to mention something I haven't heard.
Oh, good.
So far, we've talked a lot, and we know a lot about the type of censorship that's happening on Twitter that's coming from the top down, i.e., when the government is saying, look out for this, take a look at this tweet, that kind of thing. Here are the terms. What we haven't really seen discussed much is how much of this censorship is coming from the bottom up. Now, we know that Twitter is dealing with their legacy reporting process whereby users can report other tweets. So I think there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that really hasn't been explored yet. How much does that type of input from people influence who's getting censored, or does it? And, if I was one of those woke leftists in Twitter who had access to the code base, why would I discount this as something that would basically get into the shadow banning somewhere in the occasion? Like, for instance, if you've got an account that's receiving a large number of complaints, that seems to me that would be indicative that account should be downranked. Now, that totally doesn't even deal with the fact if the complaints are legitimate. So there could be an issue where things like what would be called brigading on other platforms or group reporting could be influencing some of these accounts negatively that aren't showing up on these top level labels that are coming from like recent strike, recent this, recent that, and it's just a preponderance of reporting. And I think that if Dave has a chance to go back there, or the next person who does, that would be an interesting angle to pursue, because I think a lot of people are beginning to have questions about how the reporting procedure for violations is being used when it's received by Twitter.
I agree. I think you started chopping up at the end. I don't know if it was on my end or everyone's end. No, but I got it. Okay, cool. We'll go to Ian, Jim, Nick, Sam, and Justin. Just a quick final words. Keep it short, guys.
Yeah.
And then we'll wrap up the space. Go ahead, guys.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, we are living in a brave new world right now. And fortunately, Elon Musk has offered us a path forward, one that is, that actually is going to bring us to a much better place. Because right now we're in a dark time where censorship has become normal. It's become normalized, and people are calling for more censorship and more censorship of political speech. I'm not talking about, crimes or whatever, right? I mean, certain things are certainly not part of free speech, such as, posting child pornography, for instance. The way forward, and this is crucial, right? Without free speech, we will be unable to even be the deciders of our future, the deciders of our the world that we live in, if we're not allowed to express ourselves. And it's unfortunate that companies like Meta and companies like Google have gone on board with this establishment of the established narrative. And Twitter seems to be the only major company right now that's fighting against it. And I hope that this will perhaps awaken a lot of people who work at these other companies to realize that, okay, maybe what they're doing is wrong. And they can see the rise in popularity on Twitter, as noted with the with Spaces, how big these places get. We got 10,000 listeners, 10,000 actively engaged listeners. I hope that they see what's happening and they're like, okay, maybe Elon's got the right, he's doing the right thing, and that we need to do the same thing, just to, if only to compete with him. Now, for that to happen, I mean, he's going to need our support, and I'm all on board with this. So I hope that the rest of you guys are too.
Go ahead, Jim. Nick. Sam,
right, well,
Justin, come on, guys.
Suddenly,
no one's rude anymore. Suddenly, everyone's waiting for anyone. You're all shy. You're innocent.
What happened?
Polite, my ass, man, my ass. Be yourselves. Come on, jump in, argue with each other.
No. Look, I think my thought on this real quick is that we're basically. There are a lot of people want to put this into a rear view mirror. I mean, the only reason this has really taken the dynamite sort of course that it has is because of the last 3 years over COVID, right? There was like this great sort of gap the government saw. Oh my gosh, super vulnerable. We can totally insert ourselves. People aren't watching. Let's crush this right now, right? But I think what I'm hearing on a lot of conversations, a lot of people just kind of want to put it behind them. So we've got to put the pedal to the metal and make sure people know. I've had conversations with 2 select committees on Wednesday to talk about some COVID issues. I guarantee you they don't have a clue about some of this stuff there. So we've got to find other channels beyond Twitter to make this known, but keep pushing here because this is where everything starts.
Well, I just got very briefly to say that I'm opening a book on what happens first, whether SpaceX makes it to Mars, Tesla launches a Cybertruck, or Elon Musk manages to fix Twitter. So that's my word for the day. Let's see what happens
Cybertruck.
first.
I want to make one more.
I hope so, because I've got 5 ordered.
Mario, if I can, one more.
Go ahead.
Sure. We need to step back from just the Twitter file part of it and understand that what took place, it was, from the government's perspective, was basically a response to an emergency. And that emergency was Donald Trump getting elected. So they literally ran a major operation. And the operation was the CISA, apparatus to control what was on social media. They were successful with it, and now they're running the same drill with COVID and everything else. That is what that operation needs to be exposed, and that apparatus at CISA needs to be torn down. Lastly, I found like a director.
I think we're losing them there.
Your mic, Nick, your mic is really bad. Go ahead. Jim and Nick, final words?
Sure. I'll jump in real quick. I definitely want to say I'm encouraged by what Dave Rubin reported about Elon's behind-the-scenes sentiments about Twitter. He did say that Elon was very, very genuine about his goals, about sort of rooting through the issues that are there in terms of fixing the shadow banning thing. I know that's been a huge complaint among people, even recently, saying, or at least claiming, that they've been shadow banned and their tweets aren't getting as much reach and everything. But it seems like, based on what Dave Rubin told us on this space today, he was able to uncover that there are a lot of tags that were put in place that even the first level of Twitter moderators weren't even able to see. So they couldn't go in and remove those tags and actually, quote unquote, unshadow ban these people. So they finally went through the source code and figured that out. And hopefully they'll be able to permanently fix that issue. But I think we need to realize that this is a much more complicated problem than what we see on the surface, and maybe have a little bit of faith in Elon to actually get it done in the long run.
Yeah, on my end, I just want to see Elon Musk turn $44 billion into $100 billion. And I'm all in for that because I think a lot of people that get involved here, creators and others, are going to benefit from that as well. Because, listen, you had a system in place, and Name Redacted got bumped there for some reason, and he was making some good points. This CISA thing is really bad. A lot of what the government was doing is just horrible. I think Elon's got a little bit of a handle on it, even though he's admitted that he's got a lot of work to do. But the guy is very capable of putting people around him and building systems to fix all this. And the Twitter platform is kind of the last bastion of free speech. And if he gets the Frankenstein dead skin off of this thing, it can really make a huge difference for everybody. I think it already is making a big difference. And of course, with some more to do. And we watch it in our spaces here, too. You know, I think Elon's doing a yeoman's job. But, you know, we see little glitches that come in here. Nonetheless, we got hundreds of thousands of people that are listening to what we're talking about, and they're in other places as well. I'm very, very excited for the future of the political and cultural discourse in this country. And we're going to obviously stay here making certain to relay that foundation in a way that gives everyone an opportunity.
Cool. I want to ask the audience to do one thing, completely off topic, just thought of it now. I want you to go to the comments for a second, because today's space is short, so I'm going to have some spare time. And I want you to give us some tips, some advice. Like, what do you want to see with spaces? What do you want to see with Twitter as well? I'm not Elon. None of us work at Twitter. But, you know, I'm not going to message Elon about those things, but we can message the Twitter team as well. Anything interesting that you guys share, you guys and girls share. And another thing is the spaces. I'm really curious to see what the audience wants with the spaces. We've got a lot of ideas internally, but at the end of the day, we're doing all this for you, for the audience. So that's pretty much it. I think it was a great space. Really appreciate you all, and I want to keep it short on purpose.
But you guys got to sign up for the newsletter too.
Look at you shill, man. You're shilling more than me now. Look at you.
Nick wants a promotion, I think.
Click on the newsletter. You buy one, get one free. You buy one newsletter, you get one free, even though it's free. Otherwise, appreciate you all. Hopefully, there's no breaking news today, so we keep recharging those batteries after yesterday. And I don't know about other panelists, especially the moderators, but yesterday was one of the best days in a really long time, and I literally sat home and did nothing. That's how exhausted I am from the spaces.
Awesome.
Yeah, nothing for you, Mario, is only working 8 hours a day. So
I miss just sitting there. I miss my life where I just sit there, run my business, jump on calls with my team, and just relax. I can move away without a big, goofy headset on my head. So yesterday was awesome. But yeah, I hope we'll see you today if there's any breaking news. Otherwise, I think we have a space for tomorrow. So we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you all. And we'll see you soon. Bye.